James was a young man who, like many others, harbored grand ambitions. His dreams were vivid and expansive, stretching far beyond the horizons of his small village. He envisioned himself as a leader, a successful businessman, and a figure of inspiration. Yet along with his dreams came an equally powerful burden, the fear of failure. This fear was a constant companion, whispering doubts into his ear at every turn. Despite his natural talents and strong work ethic, James found himself crippled by an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. Every time he made progress toward his goals, the same paralyzing thoughts would invade his mind. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? What will others think of me? These thoughts haunted him, making it difficult to enjoy even the smallest successes. No matter how hard he tried, James felt like he was running in circles, chasing a finish line that was always just out of reach. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get notified about new videos. One evening, after a particularly taxing day at work, James sat alone in his modest apartment, feeling the weight of his latest failure pressing down on him. He had just lost a major project, a project that he had poured his heart and soul into, and the sting of defeat was still fresh. As he stared out of his window, his thoughts spiraling out of control, a memory from his childhood surfaced in his mind. He recalled a story his grandmother used to tell him, a story about a wise old sage who lived high in the mountains. This sage was said to possess unparalleled wisdom and the ability to help people conquer their deepest fears. As a child, James had been captivated by the tale, but he had never truly believed it. It was, after all, just a story, or so he had thought. But now, in his moment of despair, the story took on a new significance. What if the sage could help him? What if this was the solution he had been searching for all along? With a renewed sense of purpose, James made up his mind. He would seek out the sage and ask for his guidance. Early the next morning, he packed a small bag with essentials, left a note for his family, and set off on his journey to the mountains. The journey was far more challenging than James had anticipated. The path was steep and winding, the terrain rocky and uneven. The weather was unpredictable one moment. The sun beat down on him mercilessly. The next, he found himself drenched in a sudden downpour. But the physical hardships paled in comparison to the mental challenges he faced. As he climbed higher, the familiar doubts began to creep back into his mind. What if the sage doesn't exist? What if this journey is a fool's errand? He questioned his decision to leave behind the life he knew, even if it was one marred by fear and frustration. Just when James was on the verge of turning back, he encountered an old man sitting by the side of the path. The man had a kind face, with deep-set eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. "Where are you headed, young man?" the old man asked, his voice gentle but firm. James hesitated before answering. "I'm searching for the sage who lives in these mountains. They say he can help people overcome their fears." The old man nodded thoughtfully. "The sage you seek is indeed wise, but the path to him is not an easy one. It is filled with obstacles, both physical and mental. Many have tried to reach him, but few have succeeded." James's heart sank at these words. The journey had already been so difficult, and the thought of facing even more challenges was almost too much to bear. But then the old man smiled a smile that was both encouraging and knowing. "The journey itself is a test," the old man continued. "It is meant to teach you the very lessons you seek. If you can overcome the challenges on the way, you will be ready to receive the wisdom the sage has to offer." James felt a flicker of hope reignite within him. He thanked the old man and resumed his journey, the old man's words echoing in his mind. The path grew steeper, the air thinner as he climbed higher into the mountains. Along the way, he encountered various people, some who tried to dissuade him, telling him that the sage was nothing but a legend, and others who offered words of encouragement, urging him to continue. Despite the persistent doubts, James pressed on. He was driven by the hope that the sage could help him conquer his fears. After several days of arduous travel, he finally reached the peak of the mountain. There, nestled among the rocks, was a small, simple hut, just as the stories had described. James's heart raced as he approached the hut. The journey had taken everything out of him, but he had made it. Inside, he found the sage, a man of advanced age with a long white beard and eyes that seemed to see straight into James's soul. The sage greeted him with a warm smile and motioned for him to sit. "I know why you have come," the sage said, before James could utter a word. "You seek to overcome your fear of failure." James nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Master. This fear consumes me. It has held me back for so long, and I don't know how to conquer it. I feel as though I'm losing myself in the process." The sage regarded James for a long moment before speaking. Fear is a powerful force, one that can paralyze even the strongest of minds. But fear is also an illusion, a shadow that disappears when faced with the light of understanding. To conquer your fear, you must first understand its nature. James listened intently, hanging on to every word. The sage continued, "I will help you, but first you must complete a task, a challenge that will require you to confront your deepest fears. Are you willing to do this?" Without hesitation, James agreed, though a knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. The sage led him outside the hut and pointed to a dark, foreboding cave in the distance. "Inside that cave lies the answer you seek," the sage said. "But be warned, what you find there will test you in ways you cannot imagine. You must enter the cave alone, face what lies within, and find your way out. Only then will you be ready to receive the wisdom you desire." As James gazed at the cave, a wave of fear washed over him. The darkness seemed to beckon him, promising to swallow him whole. But he knew there was no turning back now. This was the challenge he had come for, and he had to face it. Taking a deep breath, James stepped into the cave. The darkness enveloped him immediately, and he could feel the cold, damp air pressing against his skin. The light from the entrance faded until he was completely surrounded by darkness. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of his own breathing. James's heart pounded in his chest as his mind began to conjure terrifying images, creatures lurking in the shadows, unseen dangers waiting to pounce. His fear began to grow, threatening to overwhelm him. But then he remembered the sage's words. Fear is an illusion, a shadow that disappears when faced with the light of understanding. He forced himself to calm down, focusing on his breath, grounding himself in the present moment. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he began to make out the faint outlines of the cave walls around him. He moved forward cautiously, feeling his way through the darkness, determined to find the way out. The challenges inside the cave were relentless. At one point, James had to cross a narrow ledge over a deep chasm, where one wrong step would send him plummeting into the abyss. His fear surged once again, but he pushed through it, focusing on each step, one at a time, until he reached the other side. Further into the cave, he encountered a maze of tunnels, each leading in a different direction. The thought of getting lost in the labyrinth and never finding his way out filled him with dread. But he reminded himself that the answers he sought were within him. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and listened to his intuition. Slowly, he began to navigate the maze, trusting his instincts to guide him. With each challenge, James discovered something new about himself. He learned that fear was not an enemy to be vanquished, but a teacher that revealed his true strength. He realized that his fear of failure had been holding him back because he had been focusing on the possibility of defeat rather than on his ability to succeed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, James saw a faint light in the distance. His heart leaped with hope, and he quickened his pace. The light grew brighter as he approached, and soon he found himself standing at the entrance of a tunnel that led out of the cave. As he stepped into the light, he was greeted by the sight of the sage, standing at the edge of the tunnel with a serene smile on his face. "You have done well, James," the sage said. "You have faced your fears and emerged stronger for it. The cave is a reflection of your mind, and the challenges you faced within it are the fears that have been holding you back. By confronting them, you have learned that fear is not something to be feared, but something to be understood and overcome." James felt a deep sense of peace wash over him as the sage's words sank in. He had faced his fears head-on and discovered a strength within himself that he hadn't known existed. The fear of failure that had once seemed so overwhelming now felt like a distant memory. "Thank you, Master," James said, bowing deeply to the sage. "You have shown me the way, and I am forever grateful." Don't forget to like and subscribe to get notified about new videos. The sage placed a hand on James's shoulder and said, "The wisdom you sought was always within you, James. I merely guided you to it. Remember, fear is only as powerful as you allow it to be. When you focus on your goals and trust in your abilities, fear loses its grip on you." With those final words of wisdom, James bid farewell to the sage and began his journey back down the mountain. The path that had once seemed so daunting now felt manageable, even familiar. He walked with a newfound confidence, knowing that he had the strength to overcome any obstacle in his path. When James returned to his village, he was a changed man. The fear of failure that had once held him back was no longer a part of him. He pursued his goals with determination and focus, unafraid of the challenges that lay ahead. In time, James achieved great success in his career and personal life. But more importantly, he had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that the only thing standing between him and his dreams was the fear he had created in his own mind. And now that fear was gone, replaced by the light of understanding and the strength to overcome any challenge. The story of James spread throughout the land, inspiring others to face their fears and pursue their dreams with courage and determination. For in the end, it is not the absence of fear that leads to success, but the courage to move forward in spite of it. If you enjoyed my video, please like and subscribe.